Joining us now, Niger Innis, national spokesperson for the Congress on Racial Equality. This is the economy is just booming. Of course, unemployment among all people, African Americans, Latinos, women, is just phenomenally low, record low, and almost record high confidence about this economy as well. Niger, great to talk to you. How you doing, my friend?
Always good to be on with you, Laura.
So this is wild. I mean, you have fewer than 24 white nationalist losers at this rally. People even the CNN, or not CNN, it was the USA Today reporter had to say they didn't even fill up the little bus that they were riding in from Northern Virginia. That's how pathetic it was. There were more media people covering them than actual white nationalists. So you had that happen, and then you had all this tumult on the streets in D.C. No real bad injuries or anything, but it was pretty nasty. The poor police standing there getting all that abuse, and then people threatening the president's life. That was nice. What's your overall take on how this is all going down on the racial topic?
Well, of course, Laura, that did not come from these 24, if that much, pitiful band of so-called white nationalists, as much as it came from the Antifa anarchist crowd that were viciously insulting to black and brown policemen and actually obstructing policemen trying to open up a gate so that people can come and leave. I think that the media is obsessed with negative coverage of President Trump. They can't get him on the economy. They can't get him on the optimism that exists within all communities, particularly communities of color. You have not just low black and Hispanic unemployment. For blacks, you have the lowest in recorded history unemployment. You essentially have an economy that has more jobs available than it has people to fill those jobs. And what's so tragic, and I was just recently doing another show, Laura, and it was talking about, which I'm sure you've confronted before, this white privilege nonsense on college campuses. And at a time that there's this tremendous skills gap that exists so that there are some great paying jobs available to black and brown communities and whites and Asians, nevertheless, these universities want to go off into white privilege and why Whitey did this and why Whitey did that instead of giving these kids the tools and the skills to capture these great jobs in this booming economy.
Yeah, I mean, I get it that, of course, they're going to have to hold the president accountable. They should. That's what the press is supposed to do. Ask tough questions, ask hard questions, demand answers, more accountability, more transparency. All of that is correct. That's what the press should always do, regardless of who's president. But I think it's become beyond obvious, and this is why the press's favorability, credibility numbers are going down, 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 as the presidents are staying steady or even ticking up a little bit, is that they've now erased the line between themselves and partisan protesters.
Absolutely.
There's no line there anymore.
They've become fully engaged in being anti-Trump partisans. And there's no question about it. I mean, somebody was asking me the other day, why does the president swing back at CNN? And I said, well, you had the answer to the question in your question. He swings back. CNN and some other establishment media have declared a full frontal war on the president. And of course, there are exceptions. There's still some fine reporters at CNN and some other mainstream institutions, but for the most part, they are waging a ideological jihad against this president. And there was some survey that said something like 93% of his coverage is negative. This is absurd. I mean, Reagan had it bad. W also had it very, very bad. But I don't even think those gentlemen had it as bad as this president in the first 2 years of his administration.
No, and the left always goes too far. They always take it a step too far. They get ahead of steam, They're like, oh, we got him now. We got him now. We're going to get him now. And so then the next thing you know, someone's threatening the president's life on television. Or a reporter himself is getting assaulted by an Antifa person, and NBC won't report on it. It's their own reporter. If they talk about ironic or just, I don't know, disturbing, ironic, sickening, I don't know.
The problem is, Laura, the problem is that it was Antifa, and it cut against the negative anti-Trump, anti-so-called white nationalist narrative. If it had been one of those 24 protesters, you can be sure that not only would NBC, but CNN and the rest of the media would have had that splashed on the TV screens all across the country.
No, I think that's right. And can you imagine if someone at a protest that was even nominally conservative threatened Obama's life?
Oh my God.
Or attacked, or how about if a Trump supporter literally cut the cord of a media cameraman and then pushed down a reporter? Oh my gosh, this would be more Erdogan-style tactics.
They'd be demanding that the UN send special forces.
Oh yeah, blue hats would come into the. I'm surprised they don't already ask for the blue hats to come to these protests. What do you make of Omarosa?
I think Omarosa is a person that is in love with the limelight. She's got a book to hawk.
Yeah.
And she is going to hawk it by whatever means necessary. No lie is too big to assert. And, look, it's one thing. Either she was dishonorable and dishonest when she was working for this so-called racist for over a year, or she's lying when she calls him a racist now. It can't be both. It's one or the other.
Yeah, well, the president never should have hired her, though. I mean, it
was disgraceful, and I've been really nice, and I kept my mouth kind of quiet on that.
It was a disgrace.
There were Black Republicans and conservatives and Black Democrats that had supported this president were outraged when Omarosa was picked for that very sensitive, high-powered job. And
then people, Niger, who actually supported the president couldn't get a hearing to get a job.
That's right.
They could not get a hearing.
Well, I know firsthand that a very, very, very important lady who now runs one of our more important think tanks in our country, was up for a position, and Omarosa got it cut completely. And she happens to be African American, So no, she wreaked havoc on the Trump administration and on the African American community that she was supposed to serve.
Well, so now the media are moving on from Omarosa, just the person. I mean, they're interviewing her, but now it's, okay, how many African Americans are left in the West Wing? And they're hammering this question to any African American person, or frankly anyone who is tangentially related to the White House. Do you think that's a legitimate question, a legitimate inquiry?
I think it's a legitimate inquiry if you had a fair media. But if you have a media that actively goes after not just President Trump, but also his administration officials, his appointees, his cabinet secretaries, and the like, I know several African Americans in the administration, and I won't mention their name for fear that they're going to become targets of the wrath of the media. So I think under normal circumstances, it's absolutely an appropriate question. It's a good question to ask this administration. George W. Bush's administration had more African Americans, Hispanics, Asian Americans than the Obama administration would. So they certainly didn't hold Obama's feet to the fire when it comes to questions like that. But yeah, it's fair to ask that question. But I would be very reluctant to shine a spotlight on administration officials, because the next thing you know, they'll be having lunch somewhere or getting a cup of coffee, and 12, a couple of dozen of these knuckleheads will come harass them.
That's a very good point. Well, I think that, again, we have to remember that the press, they don't really, some of these activists, some in the press, they don't really care about They don't care about how many African Americans you hire. That's not really the point. Because if you hired African Americans and they agreed with the Trump agenda, which Omarosa did not, so I don't know why she was ever hired. It was stupid. I'm sorry, but it was a idiotic decision to bring in someone with literally no experience at all.
Well, the only experience she had was working as an intern or something along those lines in the Clinton White House.
Yeah, so
she's a Democrat.
I mean, again, the president was new to Washington. I get how you don't want the swamp. I get that. But if you're going to put people in assistant to the president level, do you know what? Incredible people have had those jobs. I mean, people, incredible intellect, background. Again, I'm not saying anything but personally about her. I'm not going to get into the personal thing. But I'm saying with just experience, you need people with real experience in serving in an administration or serving in an executive role that would lend some type of judgment.
Credibility.
Yeah, credibility, judgment. But the fact that she goes into the Situation Room and is able to record, and obviously when you heard that recording, Niger, she wanted to tape the president. That's what her real goal was.
She wanted to get into the Oval Office. Yep.
That was her goal. Yep. So, Niger, come on TV soon. I hope you do. Always love having you on. We want to get to solutions for inner city America and for those who feel like they have no options out there of all backgrounds. Maybe you're stuck in an opioid nightmare. Maybe you're in a terrible, violent neighborhood. Or maybe you've just lost hope for some other reason. I mean, we can deliver solutions to people that are based in common sense ideals. But what we saw over the weekend, at least the violent, nasty, first of all, the white supremacist stuff, 24 of them, and then the Antifa crowd with their nastiness toward innocent and well-intentioned, law-abiding, law-enforcing officers, that's shameful. Absolutely shameful. Don't go away. Thanks for listening to this podcast excerpt of The Laura Ingraham Show. If you'd like to receive podcasts of our complete shows, go to lauraingraham.com and sign up to become a member of Laura 365. Our Laura 365 members get commercial-free streams and podcasts of our shows every day we're on the air. And also, you can listen to the last 30 days of The Laura Ingraham Show. Be ahead of the curve. Join Laura 365.